Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jessie Brandt, Director of Programs and Operations for the Global Wellness Summit and Institute. Please introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. Some quick logistics, feel free to choose between gallery or speaker view. Please keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, and I will be muting everyone now. This call is being recorded and you will receive the recording along with the chat in a follow-up email. I now have the pleasure of introducing you to Nancy Davis, Chief Creative Officer and Executive Director. Nancy, over to you.
Thank you, Jessie. I'm going to stay unmuted while you mute everyone.
Give me 1 second. I mute everyone and then you mute yourself.
Okay, terrific. Sorry about that, but this is how we do it. Anyway, thank you and welcome to our November full moon celebration. We're really thrilled that you're here joining us from all over the world. The term moonshot originally came from President John F. Kennedy's mission to land a man on the moon in the 1960s. The nonprofit Global Wellness Institute has an ambitious goal to help create a world free of preventable disease. And this esteemed group that you're about to see on your screen came together at our Global Wellness Summit in 2017 to launch the Wellness Moonshot, a world free of preventable disease. Since that time, the Wellness Moonshot has evolved with corporate and media partnerships, international programming, a children's moonshot in schools, and much more. The latest evolution is a powerful collaboration with Wisdom Works, led by Renee Moorfield and Kate McIver. There's the image of the group that launched it. Very, very illustrious. And there's Susie on the end there, and lots of terrific people, many of whom I'm sure are recognizable. Renee is the CEO of Wisdom Works, a social enterprise she founded in 1999 to champion a world where everyone thrives. She's advised global brands such as the Coca-Cola Company, Nike, Hermes of Paris, Booz Allen Hamilton, Hyatt, Merck, and many more. Renee is also a longtime member of the Global Wellness Institute Advisory Board. I'm going to turn this over to Renee and Kate in a moment, but first I'd like to share something about the November full moon. We try to hold these webinars on the full moon so we can all be united by something very special, something that reminds us of our place in the universe. Today, that is the Beaver supermoon. Long ago, Native American tribes named it the Beaver Moon, marking the time when beavers worked tirelessly to prepare their lodges for the coming winter, a sign of readiness, resilience, and harmony with nature's cycles. A supermoon, by the way, is larger and brighter than usual because it reaches a point closest to the Earth. The Beaver Moon marks the last supermoon of the year, and also the moment the Northern Hemisphere transitions toward longer winter nights. And that is for sure. It's dark here around 5 now. So step outside whenever it is evening for you. Look up and let the golden light of the Beaver supermoon remind you how deeply our world is connected to the rhythms of nature, to the universe, and how deeply we are connected to each other. And speaking of deep connections and bright lights, it's my pleasure to turn this over to Renee Moorfield, who will introduce our special guest. Renee?
Thank you so much, Nancy. I always feel so grateful when we'd have these conversations, and I love the Beaver Moon metaphor of working tirelessly, because this is a community that truly has worked tirelessly to advance well-being, wellness, and truly a world that everyone can thrive. So thank you for inviting us here. I am delighted to introduce Tom Herring to our conversation today. Tom is a longtime champion of purpose-driven leadership and social impact. He has spent his career helping organizations, especially the smaller ones, align their strategy, their culture, and their partnerships around a deeper sense of purpose. Today, he leads Benefit Corporations for Good, an organization that has certified more than 100 smaller organizations across the US and Canada. So if you know about B Corps globally, think about B Corps for smaller organizations. So for a moment, before I go further, I'd love, Tom, for you to raise your hand, maybe say a word, say hello to the group.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you all are. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Renee, for that nice, warm introduction.
Awesome. Awesome. So Tom and I recently had a conversation that we published on LinkedIn titled The Power of Purpose, How Small Organizations Are Leading Change. What struck me most is how purpose isn't just a statement for the wall. It's a living force that helps organizations of any size navigate complexity, make courageous choices, and stay human along the way. And I think that's especially relevant to all of us here in the Wellness Moonshot community. Whether we're leading a startup, a nonprofit, or a global initiative, we're each trying to make wellness and well-being core to how our organizations function, not just as a side project. So I want to explore that today with you, Tom, how purpose can be a catalyst for embedding well-being into the fabric of organizations, and how small organizations can play a role in healing the world. In our conversation that we had, I think it was about a month ago or so that we had a chance to talk, you spoke of aligning an organization's why, its deeper purpose, with what it does. Many leaders still find, and I can't believe I'm saying the word still, I've been doing this work for 35 years, and I can't believe I'm saying still, find that their well-being efforts sit on the sidelines of strategy. They're great programs, but they're not always embedded in how the organization actually leads change and operates. From your experience, what helps an organization make that leap so that well-being becomes part of the system itself, not just an add-on? And what obstacles tend to get in the way, especially for smaller organizations?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Renee. It is an interesting conflict or challenge for a lot of small businesses. There's many reasons for that. One of the things that we have found as I've worked with 100 plus small businesses and really helping define their purpose and their mission is finding a way that they can integrate that thinking of well-being into their culture via how does that organization define success? You're linking, my suggestion is always to link with that well-being to core values, business strategy, and day-to-day practices. And find a way to meld that into existing systems. If this is a business that's coming in that has already been operating for some period of time. And so let me give an example. So a couple of ideas here is, look into performance reviews. Take a look at, is there a life balance component of that performance review? How do your meetings model care and boundaries? What policies prioritize people as much as profits? And I think the big task for leaders is to really walk that talk, to make sure that their own practices, they're sharing their own practices for balance, for recognizing possible burnout, inviting honest feedback. I think it's all this great word transparency is, such a popular and well-respected term these days. And I think that's what our leaders are trying to do as best as they can. Things that get in the way of smaller organizations in terms of trying to initiate that kind of thinking is that there's two things really: limited resources and old habits. And it's not so much about adding a program, it's more about shifting the mindset of that leader. Make small, consistent changes that build trust, that build resilience. The small businesses, and gosh, I've been in one for a long time. You get this cultural inertia, this go, go, go. I've got to get things done. And you don't take the time to reflect, slow down, and kind of rethink the systems that you have in place. Smaller teams, though, there's advantage for smaller teams, and that is the ability to be more flexible, to pivot quicker than you would a large organization. So they can experiment more freely with ideas that might bring in that that kind of thinking to their organization, to their team, to their community. And so then it feels like you're embedding well-being more naturally into how that business operates every day.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're talking about the literally embedding it into metrics, embedding it into vision, embedding it into values, embedding it into how teams work, how meetings are held, just every aspect. So at some point, there may not need to be the word or a strategy around well-being in that business because it's just how things are done. It's really
Exactly.
just how things are done. And that's really terrific.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you a question about leadership mindset. I've got some also questions about how businesses can be a force of healing, but I'm going to save that for a second.
Okay.
This mindset, when you said the deeper change for leaders is often about mindset. Can you say a little more about that? What have you noticed in the 100+ organizations you've worked with?
Yeah, so I think I'll go back to that last uh, comment I made about this go, go, go attitude. And like I said, I've lived it, so I know the beast very well. Um, when I talk to leaders about just being able to step back for a second and rethink their mission, rethink their values, always guided by your values. And I think that starts to help those that are struggling because, this sounds good. I know that this is good for my community, but they were operating so quickly. It's just inertia. And things I suggest is that they, take a moment, talk with your team, learn from them. I always think that's the best source. And if you don't have a team, your team could be the contractors if you're a solopreneur, the contractors that are helping you work through your mission and achieve it. And it's always amazing how, the best answers come from those that are closest to you, and yet they're sometimes the last resource that a leader considers going to.
Hmm.
So those are some things I think that kind of help get them refocused, get them guided. And then I think it's a matter of, starting to build the trust and, build that trust element that starts to come, which is essential to all business relationships, let alone human relationships.
When we're working with global companies, often we find that leaders themselves, even nonprofits, we've done some nonprofit work lately, often we find that leaders themselves have not actually themselves thought about what would it mean for me to thrive as a leader and as a whole human being. And they've never asked themselves that question. They've been so focused, as you've said, on the go, go, go of work. So I'm wondering, are you finding that with small organizations as well, that there's this outward focus, but less of an inward, well, wait a minute, not what is it? Yes, our organization needs to thrive, but I also need to show up as well as I can. And that doesn't just mean wellness behaviors, it means what I'm radiating from my core. What are you finding with smaller companies?
Yeah, I think again, and I think this has always been the case, although I think it's really underscored in today's economy. But of course, there's this idea that we all worry about is, how do we keep our doors open? And I think there is that self-preservation that sometimes overrides the ability to get clear on what really makes for a good organization, what makes for a great leader like me. Am I doing the right things? Am I thinking? Part of our certification is based, as you mentioned earlier, on the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. And you got to have all three to be a certified business through our community. And realizing that when you get a leader to realize that at a certain point, as opposed to just being so focused on profit and so focused on what my bottom line and what my revenue is going to look like this month, you start to see just a little bit of, taking a breath and realizing, this is important. This is how I keep good employees. This is how I keep a great face in my community. This is what makes, new people want to come and work in our organization. And there's your group is very, savvy and wise, and all the research is just showing how, in particular, younger generations are really looking for purpose-driven organizations. Given the choice between one that is purely profit related and one that is doing some good in the world, and however that business defines that good, is the leading choice for the best and the brightest, as we always call them, the best and the brightest employees that you want.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm noticing some questions and comments in chat, and I want to let everyone know that I'm going to ask Tom another question or two, but then we're going to completely open it up to chat. So we're going to start to go through those questions. So Tom, at WisdomWorks, we often talk about organizations as living systems with the potential to harm or to heal. In your work, I know that you've helped these smaller companies anchor their purpose in genuine service to people and the planet. So what does it mean, in your mind, to build a business that heals? And why do you think smaller organizations, perhaps even more so than larger institutions, larger organizations, are uniquely positioned to do this well, given their close kind of connection with people in the communities they serve?
Yeah, so let's go to your first question about a business that heals. And the way we view it, and the way I view it, is that is a business that leaves people, that leaves communities, that leaves the planet better off than before it ever touched them, before that business. So that is a business that's operating with that kind of thinking. It recognizes businesses can be a source of stress, a source of disconnection, a source of harm, or on the other hand, it can also recognize that a business can help repair and restore. Their foundation is built on trust and on fairness. And as I always like to come back to, as I mentioned earlier, values alignment. Are my values reflected in the practices of my business? And that's how we help our certified community, how we can make them better, a better business in terms of their employees, in terms of their the things they do in their community, and how they're viewed in the world. It's doing less harm to actively doing good. And as we use, it's a very, the B Corp community uses, certainly we've picked up on it, and that's being a business that is a force for good. You are a force for good. The second question was, how are smaller orgs uniquely positioned to do what we just talked about, what I just discussed, and better. And that is, there's a closer relationship to the human level. You operate closer to the human level. You have these intimate relationships that are powerful. Your empathy and community matter to you at that certainly at that smaller org level. And the other thing about small businesses is that they don't just see people as data points, but people that they know by name, and that intimacy, helps steer an organization when something is off. And I think those are just great things that we as humans do every day, but let alone as a business leader. Those are such great ways to help create a business that is thriving. And the other thing about small businesses is you can adapt values into action much quicker. You have the ability, the agility, and the authenticity to get a real advantage in really modeling what a healing business looks like. So, guided by purpose and deeply connected to the lives that business touches every day.
You gave me an example of a manufacturing company, and I think we talked about it. I think I wrote about it in the article about our interview, and I'm wondering if you can share that example, because it's a really great practical example of how that manufacturing company is putting their values into action for repair, repair work in the world.
Yeah. So the business is called Willamette Technical Fabricators. And the business leader of this company that started it, she and her husband started it, Alicia Chapman's her name, was 2 years ago recognized as 40 under 40 by the Portland Business Journal, one of the best younger business people coming and doing good in the community. And what she and her husband have built is a company that took advantage in a good way of building green energy infrastructure. So windmills that are helping generate renewable energy, some of the infrastructure in President Biden's bill, those kinds of projects and initiatives have been very much a part of building this business. But what has been central is treating her team incredibly well. And the specific example, Renee, that I use with you is that Willamette takes and helps women coming out of the prison system, help them build skills so they're making more than a working wage, but contributing positively to their community, to their company, of course, and to their families. And it is very much embedded in the work they do. And it pretty much, when I went through certification with her, she's been in the recertification queue now. I think she's coming up for year 3. I was so knocked out, and we have very few perfect scores, but she got it. And when I initially got her questionnaire back, I said, the radar goes up initially, and then I looked through and all the work did, and I said, boy, this is the model right here. So yeah.
That is great. And so tell us a little bit about the scorecard itself. So you have the scorecard that looks at different dimensions to help an organization be not only purpose-driven, but really aligned with his values for people on the planet. So tell us a little bit about what's in that scorecard.
Sure. So it's built. We just did our 2.0 version, launched in July, and it had been in place for pretty much the 6 years we've been in business. And our standards have not shifted. They're based on 8 standards. And under these 8 standards, there are multiple questions for each. And what a leader must do is go through these 60 questions is what it ends up being. And it goes through this document. And then they must self-evaluate a score of 1 to 5. And then there has to be a reason why that score was given by that leader, and attach whatever documents might support that particular score. And you must maintain a 70 plus to get certification or recertification, as the case may be. But we have some leaders also in small businesses that are incredibly hard, as I always say. I feel it's the old schooling term, hard grader. I said, you guys this is not And I will have the ability to see that what they're doing, that the score that they're giving themselves is not warranted and it should be scored higher. But basically, that's the idea. And then they get evaluation back from me on things they're doing well and things where they can improve. And then the other thing I'll just add that's a critical kind of proof point for our certified businesses is that after their first year, they must produce an annual benefit report. An annual benefit report basically details what they did to improve people, planet, and profit. And I give them a template if they want to use it. Many of them have their own branding people that they want part of it, but most importantly, the content is what's critical. And I also take a look at that to make sure that they're doing well. We talk about United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. How are they doing there? Which one have they identified with? They don't have to do all 17, but is there one that they're working on? That kind of feedback. And I think in the end, it helps them become better. And you see a steady increase in scores. At least that's been our experience over the years as they go through recertification on an annual basis.
Fabulous. That's great. And I'm glad you gave us a little more texture.
Yeah.
Part the B Corp I'm very familiar with, and it's so detailed and it's wonderful and can be overwhelming for a small organization to kind of get its arms around. So you're talking about something that, all of us running organizations have the opportunity to stretch when it comes to people and planet, and you're providing a framework to be able to do that. Before we open up to Q&A, I would love to, I think everyone in this group knows over and over and over again, knows well the CEO of the Global Wellness Institute, Susie Ellis. But I want to turn it over, in case you don't, I want to turn this over to Susie and see, Susie, any comments or questions that you have?
Well, I just put a question in the chat because I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing, because I can see that this can be very helpful for an organization, and we are a small organization. So, Tom, I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about the certification program you're talking about, what it's called, do you apply? How long does it take? How much does it cost? All of that. Yeah, that would be of interest to me, and I think maybe to others.
Great question, Susie. Yes. So typically the process, it's basically the name of our company. It's called the BCFG, short for Benefit Corporations for Good. That's a mouthful, I know. BCFG questionnaire. And here's the process. Basically, we suggest that if a company is interested in pursuing our certification, number one, we have a free, 11, 12 question self-assessment. We call I think it's called our impact assessment. It's on our homepage. A leader can go through that, in a few minutes and see if this is right for them. Number one, that's kind of where we suggest they start if they don't know much about us. Once they decide that this is a right approach for them, what they think their team, their company aligns with their practice, their values, then they go ahead and they make a fee, and the fee is based on the number of FTEs in that particular organization. As those of you listening that are familiar with B Lab or B Core, theirs is based on revenue of a company. We just base it on simply the number of full-time employees that a company has. And it's from a lowest level, it's about, I think, $300 is the lowest level, and that's for companies that have up to 5 FTEs. And then it can go up to $2,500 for those that have, I think, 100 or 200 plus. We do have a few businesses that are in that 1,500 employee level. We have one here in Oregon that is quite large. But the majority of our businesses are very much under 10 employees. There are many solopreneurs. And so once they've gone through that, they have the 8 standards of understanding the values of benefit corporations, what we call conscientious leadership. DEI is very important to us. So we have a section on that, green practices, customer community engagement, customer service, life balance, and strategic business practices. Those are our 8 standards. and those questions will fall under that. And then once I receive, usually, once I receive a questionnaire back from somebody, it usually takes me a week to 2 weeks to go through it, assess it, make an evaluation, and then I get on a call afterwards. And when we go through it with that particular leader on, as I mentioned earlier, things you're doing well, things where you can need some help, and suggestions that might make them a better purpose-driven business.
Great. And how often you talked about recertification? Is the certification like for a year or so, or?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what is the website so we can find more?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Benefit Corporations for Good. It's the full phrase, benefitcorporationsforgood.com. And on the recertification, it is a lesser than your fee is less when you recertify. It's just the first year that you pay the full. So we want to make this accessible, approachable to everyone. This is the first year we're really offering scholarships to those small businesses that just can't, we're very open to that, to encourage and be as accessible and inclusive to the small business community.
Thank you.
Yes.
Awesome. So I want to turn it over to Kate McIver. Kate is our COO of WisdomArcs, and she's been following the chat, and I think putting some things into chat as well. Kate, if you could guide us in the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Tom, so much for this conversation. There has been a lot of engagement in the chat and a lot of agreement with what you're saying. And I wonder if I'll just start on to continue the practical. There was a question around how you define small businesses. Like, what does that mean? And then also, I wonder if you could speak to kind of the industries that you're seeing right now. Like, what's the breakdown of those companies that are currently getting certified? Yeah, if you could just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Kate, great questions, both of those. We're pretty loose with our definition of small business. I mean, is that the SBDA has 500 or less, or I don't even remember the definition, but as I said, we have one company that has 1,500 employees, and I feel that they're smaller. I will say that we have had several businesses lately that have come to us that have been certified B Corps, and these are companies that have anywhere from 75 to 150 employees. They have felt that the B Lab certification is too Fortune 500 focused, and they feel that just wasn't a good fit for them. And then in terms of industries, certainly professional services is very big. We have law firms, we have financial planners, we have marketing consultants that are just solopreneurs. We have a very large presence, a growing presence in the solar industry. We have 4 solar companies, only one in Oregon, and the other 3 are out of state, different states. We have a wine bar. We have some retail. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. We do have a few tech firms, smaller tech firms, but these firms tend to be more consultants than purveyors of hardware or software. They go in and they help various sectors where they have skills and expertise. So it's a pretty good mix. I'm trying to think of anything, I think the wine bar is probably the most unique. We're working on getting some wineries in. Architects, we have a few architects in as well, as I said, falling under that professional services umbrella.
Thank you. And so would it be a correct assumption that most of these are for-profit businesses because of the triple bottom line, not so much nonprofits or maybe those in the government public sector? Is that a correct assumption?
That is correct. And I think part of being a benefit corporation, because we always encourage our businesses to also incorporate that way, and there are 40 states now that offer this, is that you must be a for-profit. So you can't be a 501c3. And you can't be a sole proprietor. You need to have that baked in. And we always say that's another proof point for people that are investigating or looking at your company as either a customer or an employee. They want to see that you're guided by that in your operating agreement, that you have those those important things in your legal documents as a business.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you for that. There were a couple questions in the chat there to just clarify.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, very good questions. Yes.
Yeah. And, there was one question that came in kind of going back to the start of your conversation with Renee on, really ensuring that well-being is in the practices. But there was also a comment that around, shouldn't that also be part of their actual vision statement or mission in order to really be part of the day-to-day goals? Do you see a connection in the language maybe that people are using within their vision and values and how that guides what the practices become, or does it go both ways? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, super great question. So I'll just give you an example, and then I'll come back to a little broader thing here. I mentioned that a company must produce an annual benefit report for recertification. You don't get a recertification from our company unless that is done. And one of the key ingredients that I encourage our leaders to do when they're going through it for the first time is to make sure that their values are stated up front. So I don't want to say boilerplate, but people want to see that are looking at your report. What are you standing for? What is your mission? And what we call a brand manifesto. So it has a little marketing, but what a brand manifesto basically is, a lot of people are confused by it. I think I understand. I used to do some workshops on brand manifesto, but it's basically your why. It is really your why. Why does a person get up in the morning and do the work that he or she or they do? What is the reason for that? And that needs to be it's more of an emotional versus a more of a right brain than a left brain statement. And again, I have, I help them with that and that'll be something that might come up in a review with a company in a recertification, or even early first time certification. Is that's an important component to have on all your your communication materials, and particularly on your website and your About Us page, if you have that.
Yeah. So what I hear is really making sure that all of those dots are kind of connected. So they're both equally they're equally important.
Yeah.
Languaging and then also the skills. And I know, there was another question that they really agree with you on the power of mindset. And you mentioned also that small businesses, one of the advantages is that you can operate closer to that human level. You really know people, as you said, on a name by name basis. And I wonder if there's some specific skills that you see within these businesses, leadership skills or people skills that enable them to be successful as a purpose-driven business. Like, can you speak a little bit about what you might be seeing from those leaders in terms of those skill sets?
Yeah, I think the one key human value that I see, and all of them, is that ability to lead with empathy. I think that's Simon Sinek, as I recall, that's either his book or certainly one of his brand tenets, that you lead. And these are very empathetic leaders, that it's built into them. It's who they are. It's their DNA. And that doesn't shift. And I see that we have quarterly get-togethers, and I'm working now on doing virtual for those businesses that are not in the state of Oregon. But what happens is, when I get these we call them happy hours for good, and we have a thought leader that comes in that helps them, and it's more of a conversation. I say no PPTs. If you want a handout, that's fine, but you got to. And I had some amazing leaders come in, and you can see that empathy bubbles out in conversation, and our people love to connect. I mean, I'm pretty knocked out. We're begun our 4th year. It was the second week in October, and I said, "This is crazy." I said, I can phone this, and the energies with these, I have nothing to do with this at all. But it is so overwhelmingly positive and uplifting, to see that kind of as I said, empathy really for other leaders, and they collaborate like, most groups do. And anyway, yeah.
I love that. Thank you. One of the
Yeah.
questions that came to me as you were speaking, and I think you just kind of touched on this, but I wonder if there's maybe something else too, is, in this complex and sometimes challenging world we are in, especially as a small business, like you mentioned earlier, what gives you hope in this time to keep moving forward on days that might feel more challenging than others?
Yeah, I think Renee and I talked about this, a month or two ago when we were doing our Zoom call. I do. The hope is in these leaders that I get. This is where I get my juice, I think, really. And I think last night for me, how voting went around the country certainly has given me some hope. But these leaders, I think, embrace and live those values that are so important, I think, to our world right now. And so I will, on occasion, I'll go back and I'll sneak in I'll go to their website and look at one of their annual benefit reports, or I'll read a blog post about what they're doing. And it's this ability to be so purpose driven that it is behind all the work and the way they approach their lives that certainly give me hope on those down days, and yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's really it.
Yeah. What I hear from you is the knowing, the deep knowing that we're not alone in this, right? We've got some peers, like look around the screen, right? We're
Yeah.
not alone.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if there are any other questions. I have some more as well that I can keep going. But Susie or Nancy, anything from you all as you are listening, just to kind of tap into both of you? And I can keep going.
I put one in the chat, and it was really, Tom, absolutely terrific. And, it's a really wonderful conversation. And I wondered about what you hear from the companies that do your certification, how it impacts their business. From a business point of view, in addition to how it might make them feel and how important it is to do this kind of work. What's the impact to their business?
It's a super great question, Nancy, because I do get that question asked a lot. I think the number one, the most important reason for certification and where they see a benefit to that business, that leader, number one says, this is what I stand for. I want people to really know what I stand for. So everything else aside, that is the single most important. Secondly, it is the majority of the businesses that have been certified feel that their teams and their stakeholders are so important to them. They want them to know that they've been certified and have this triple bottom line mentality into every business decision they make. They consider people and planet and additional profit on every business. And that's part of being incorporated as a benefit company or a benefit corporation, depending on which state, this exact same thing. Lastly, I am working, and I can't say a whole lot about it yet, but I got legislation. Well, I'll back up from it. I got legislation through the state of Oregon here 2 years ago that does give Oregon benefit companies an advantage when seeking a state contract for work. And I went through, I had to testify. I was shocked it got through, but it sailed through. And I think the whole idea was that the legislators really realized how much good these companies are doing, and they should be given. They are paying, a living wage. They are offering solid health benefits, and they might not be operating at the profit margins that they want, but it's critical that they have those baked in. And the bill I'm going to explore more this week is a bill to get through the legislature that will there might be a tax advantage and that will really speak to a lot. I certainly know that'll speak to a lot of leaders.
Then your phone will ring off the hook. To go a little old school in my metaphor.
Yes, yes.
Tom, I do want to reinforce this interplay between that you keep mentioning and reinforcing is this interplay between using government, using the system that we exist in, and the monetary, need of sustaining a business with good and the leadership practices, and that both of those together is what will make this successful from what I'm hearing. Is there anything you want to add to that as to why that is so important that you're working on both the government legislative level, but also really helping leaders practically do this on an everyday basis and live this life?
Yeah, okay, great question. So what I didn't mention earlier is that really Benefit Corporations for Good is built on 3 pillars. There are 3 pillars that are involved. So there's education, there is advocacy, and there is certification. And to be honest, the first 2 are more important to me. If somebody decides they want to be certified through Benefit Corporations for Good, I'm delighted, don't get me wrong, but I think this movement, this is my vision as long as I'm still here. That's what I really want to help. And I think part of these happy hours for good, and then there'll be upcoming very similar webinars like this. The people that I asked to help inform our leaders certainly have expertise in how do you really incorporate DEI in this day and age. And we had a tremendous author speak to that. How do you as a small business leader really make sure that your carbon output is reduced? How do you keep that? And it's a different deal than being a Fortune 500 company where you have sustainability officers, and you have all kinds of subject matter experts that the small business here wears that hat, all of them, So that's my mission. And as I said, I think they've been helping, do that. So those are really the kinds of things that drive me. I think all of them together, integrated is a powerful way to do business. And I wish it was, had been implemented 40 or 50 years ago. So.
Agreed. Before I have one more question, and then I know there's some others that we won't get to. I wonder, how can they get in touch with you, Tom? Before I move into the last question, what would be the best way to kind of follow up and continue this conversation with you for those interested?
Yes. So certainly you can go to the website. Anybody can email me. It's just tom@benefitcorporationsforgood.com. I answer everything. We have a book of when Marianne and I, my retired business partner, started this 2017. We wrote a book called Putting Soul into Business. It's a great primer, basically, for those that don't really know some of the finer details of being a benefit company. And we interviewed, the key was that we interviewed 11 thought leaders that are all certified B Corps mostly. There are a few benefit companies, but we hadn't started yet. And to give, and various industries across a good swath of industries. And I'm more than willing to send a link for that free download, and if that's important.
We send out an email after this call I mentioned at the beginning of the call that contains all of the pertinent information and follow-up. And so everybody doesn't have to worry about catching Tom's email or anything now. It'll all come to you, including the link to the book. That would be great. Yeah. And anything else, plus the recording and chat and all kinds of great information and follow-up and ways to become involved with our moonshot.
Yeah. So Tom, as we wrap up our Q&A with you, I want to come back to kind of what initiates the gathering today, our full moon, this harvest moon and the energy behind it, this time of year, at least in the US, in North America, really going into winter and this storing up. We've worked so hard. I wonder if there's a practice that you could offer those as we leave, something that those who want to live this purpose-driven life that we could do at this time of year to really start this journey and or enhance it if you're already on it?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Kate. I think that I'll just tell you what works for me right now, and it does happen at this time of year, and more so than ever. And it's very much mindful in my, my daily, travels or daily work or whatever. And that is, I know it's an overused and overheard word, but I think gratitude is so critically important to take this energy that's here and really put that front and center and be mindful of that. Somebody cuts me off, and drive the freeway, those are things that I really, really practice and keep that as part of my energy flow, I think, through the day. So that would be my suggestion. Be grateful.
Thank you. And thank you again so much, Tom. And thank you all for your questions. And I know there were more we didn't get to. Nancy, I think I'm handing it back over to you as we wrap up, or Jesse. My apologies if misspoke.
Susie, did you want to say something? I know you're unmuted. I didn't know whether you wanted to comment.
Well, I have another question, but
Yeah, go ahead.
Have questions.
Yeah, we still have
Tom,
some minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I noticed we have like a few minutes. I was wondering, I was curious about your saying that you do not work with nonprofits. And I was kind of perplexed about that because it seems like nonprofits, the Global Wellness Institute, for example, is a nonprofit. And I think that, we would be very aligned with wanting to, maybe look at this certification. So is there a reason that you do not work with nonprofits?
I love nonprofits, and I didn't go into my how we started, but Marianne and I initially wanted to be senior marketing consultants for nonprofits. But as I mentioned earlier, all 40 states do not offer benefit corporation status to a nonprofit. And the main reason is that there is a mission already built in to a 501c3. And that's kind of how the business law has remained. What's really interesting, Susie, is that on this, so I will tell you, this was 5 years ago or so, we built a questionnaire that we thought, well, maybe we can help nonprofits. But we went to a very good friend of ours who was very active in the Nonprofit Association of Oregon, and she has her own business now, and she is certified through B Corp, but she's a for-profit, and she said basically these exact words that I just told you, and she's been in the nonprofit world probably for 30 years. And so anyway, that's truly the reason, why we haven't offered it.
I want to chime in here too, because I am appreciating, as a small business and as one that when we started our organization 26 years ago, there weren't these distinctions. You were either nonprofit or for-profit. And now there are more distinctions because there are so many companies, for-profit companies, that say, wait a minute, like we call ourselves a social enterprise. We really started from a purpose-driven place. And so this idea of being a benefit corporation, that is becoming a legal status. I'm loving that there are now these nuances and paths that, new paths for people to take rather than this dichotomy. I'm either this or I'm this. And yet I could see, Susie, totally, just from being on the board of the Global Wellness Institute, I could see totally how valuable it would be to look at those 8 categories and assess ourselves as the Global Wellness Institute against those categories. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting enough, on these happy hours for good, we have, we average 35 to 50 is kind of our sweet spot of those that are attending these quarterly events. And I would say 5 to 10% are always nonprofit leaders that come and love to, because whatever the subject is, we're discussing, or the conversation we're having that particular evening is very relevant to what that nonprofit leader, what that 501c3 is doing. So, yeah.
Have you thought about maybe having a different kind of certification for nonprofits that might not have the same legal visibility or whatever, but I think there'd be, quite a few people interested.
I think it's a super idea, and you've given me pause to reflect, and I think I will discuss that with a couple of our companies for sure. I really do. I like that. And as I said, we actually had a questionnaire that was just tweaked enough to fit that 501c3 model, and then we after we got that feedback, but I think there and she, as I said, she is now part of our. She has another business that works directly with nonprofits, and I'll ask her. And I think she'd be a great place to start. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that many people on this call would raise their hand to be certified. I would think a lot of people here represent small businesses, so you may definitely be hearing from people, and that's why part of why we do all our follow-up and share everything, and it's really very, very, very good. Really appreciate everything you've had to say. Renee, I'm going to give you the last word. This has been your kind of brainchild, you and Kate.
Yeah, thank you. I would love Kate's question about what practice is the practice that really supports you, especially in this time of challenge and disruption and stress. And Tom, I loved your answer about gratitude. I started smiling because right before this, I spent about 20 minutes doing a gratitude practice just to prepare myself. I'm always so grateful to know that we are not in this alone, that when you look around the room, this virtual room, you see faces of people around the world who are deeply, deeply, deeply committed to a world of wellness and a world where everybody can thrive. And that is so inspiring. So just want to thank everyone. Thank you, Tom, for being a part of this and spending your time and sharing so generously. Thank Nancy and Susie for holding space for the Wellness Moonshot and continuing to, like the Beaver Moon, continuing to work to bring it to life and amplify it in a much bigger way. To my colleague, Kate McIver, for holding space with me in this session, and to everyone on this call, all the ways that you are showing up personally, not just in your actions and not just in what you communicate, but in who you are to create a better world, really does make a difference.
Fantastic. And when you look up at the moon today, tonight, whenever, well, let's think about gratitude for all of us being together and trying to make the world a better place. And thank you all. Please unmute and let's give Tom and Renee and Kate and Jesse a round of applause.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Great to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to you all.
Thank you.
Start to the
day.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bountiful blessings upon you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will see you again.